This is a message to all my supporters of this podcast. I'm introducing a new supporters program. You can contribute a small amount as a one-off payment to show your love for this podcast. Thank you in advance for all your contributions.
Hi, this is the Absolute Business Mindset Podcast. I am a corporate employee with an entrepreneurial mindset, hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will help and support you with new ideas about business. These are my thoughts, ideas and comments. Today we're talking about demos to clients, to targets, and understanding the insight in doing a demonstration. Hi, we're going to talk about demos today on the Absolute Business Mindset podcast. And so today we're going to talk, as I said, from a personal experience of about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did a demo, which was to a target. It was actually a current client for another part of the business, and we were trying to cross-sell our business to them. So the technology that I sell, I went through on a deep dive into a subject, and then we then talked about the technology behind it. So as I said, this was actually cross-selling what we already were established with the client. So that's probably why we had interest from them. This wasn't actually my client that I previously provided services to, but I was asked to talk to them about a particular product of ours. So just to give a bit of context, this was a 3.5 hour meeting. Split into about 4 or 5 different areas, and one of the things that I think is interesting and / understandable was that the first person that spoke, who was the subject matter expert, actually went over. So we were given designated times between each of these different areas, and first guy went over quite horrendously by about 10 minutes. So that meant that the rest of us were all a little bit on the back foot and had to be relatively brief on what we wanted to say. This is probably very common. It can usually, in my experience, lead to 2 different things. It means everyone's late, and it means the person at the end is squeezed, or everyone is a little bit more briefer and try and wrap things up relatively quickly. Now, technically, there should have been a better control of times, but when you're in a conversation with a client and they're interested and they're talking about the particular subject, you don't really want to rush them along. One of the things is you don't want to be too militant about timings. It's important to keep within a time frame, but you equally don't want to curtail a conversation, because building confidence, building rapport, building connection with clients is critically important when you're talking about these sorts of situations, because you've got to give them a lot of time. Like a whole morning is quite a long time to talk to one client about a subject. So what I found from my experience was that, as I said, the first person ran over quite significantly. I was actually second on the list of things to do, and that wasn't such a big deal for me because I wasn't time pressured. I didn't even realise we were behind until actually at the end when we sort of saw where it was. So it does happen that way. So we spoke about the technology, and so the subject matter expert went into a great deal of detail, no surprise, and there was a lot of rapport, a lot of interest in what that meant. When the technology, it felt a little bit more like we were then starting to sell, because we were then starting to sell products, services, or it's a service that we were trying to get over to them and see if they were interested in it. I split my time on my demo between slides and actually doing a demo of the product. We weren't quite ready to give a full demo of what they were asking for. We're probably about 3 months away from a live production environment on this subject, but I was able to give them an insight into the tool that without the module, but just to give them the employee. So this tool that I am selling is for the employee. They obviously are the sort of headquarters, the sort of the team that looks after their employees. So I wanted to give them both sides. Part of it was to show the actual product that the employee will see. It was equally important to talk about what I say employer, but if you know what I mean, the person who is going to be using it, looking after the individuals. So I was able to go through the slides, which gave quite a lot of detail on what this product service was going to provide, into a demo, show them the employee view, and then back to a few more slides just to give them an overview. So one of the main things about doing demos, and this comes as no surprise, we've talked about this on public speaking, is know your subject, know your slides. Equally important, if you do not know either of them, you feel exposed, because it's not so bad when you're talking them through things on slides, but to be effective, you want it to be a conversation. You don't want it to be a 20-minute or a 10-minute presentation on everything. So you need to know what you're selling, and you need to know what you got to get a preparation. So a lot of it is down to preparation. Again, not a big surprise, hopefully, if you've listened to my podcast before. You need to prepare, and it's sometimes difficult to know exactly what they're going to ask, but preempting some of those ideas is a really good idea. And I would say, obviously, you've got to know your slides, you've got to know your demo, but equally, just thinking about that to be able to preempt gives you an advantage when you're trying to talk, when they're asking questions, because they might ask questions on technology, on the subject, on... It was really interesting because actually they were quite interested, because they started very quickly talking about how they would get budget to be able to pay for the technology. This piece of technology is not cheap. I'm not going to go into details at this stage, but I thought it was interesting that initially, because it covers a couple of different areas within this part of the business, they wanted to say, well, it shouldn't all come from one budget, it might come from a couple of parts of the budget. One good thing, one bad thing. One good thing, they were thinking about the budget and how they could get it. Equally, if you've got to then split between 3 different buyers and you've got to get buying from all of them, it can be quite tricky, quite tough. So it's not always the easiest when that sort of situation. So as I said, this was 2-3 weeks ago. We followed, I just jumped to the end bit, and I'll go back in a minute, but the result of this, they've initiated conversations about it. They want to see it once it's live. They're obviously not going to purchase until they've seen it live. So we've got, as I say, probably 2 or 3 months to get all of that ready and available for them to be able to have a look at it. But they liked in premise, as an idea, it fitted what they needed to do. They're part of the business. They were worried about this, and this was an issue. So it's always better to start with selling and thinking about the issue the client has, rather than just saying this is the technology that we have. These are all selling techniques, and you can catch ideas about selling techniques all from previous podcasts that I've had. Equally, there are some other people, Jordan Peterson, for example, very good on sales. So check that out, the idea of what you want to sell. I think that you need to be authentic when you're talking in a sort of demo/sales environment. You need to show your personality. You can't be too robotic, and you can't be too dogmatic on how you're going to structure. You've got to let the conversation flow, let people ask questions, keep on track on your slides or your demo, but equally be flexible. And one of the words I thought was incredibly important was being authentic. So you feel they feel that they're getting you, part of you, and everyone should know that selling a product or service, you sell yourself, you sell your business, you sell your brand, you sell your product or service. It's not just a bit of technology. Do you want to buy it? It would be a very short conversation if it was just that. So you need to be able to connect with people. You need to be able to. This sort of sales is about building relationships, building confidence in that you are authentic and capable, and that you can deliver what you're delivering. It's sometimes a little bit more difficult when you don't actually have something live to show them. So we were kind of talking a bit about what it's going to look like, what it's going. We at this stage have a design on what it's going to look like, what the reports are. We've thought through all that, and we're just in the stage where we're starting to develop it. The codes are starting to develop it, but you do need to be when you're dealing with this sort of situation, you have to just be a little bit. It's a good vague, if you know what I mean. You need to be specific as much as you can, but be very positive when you're being vague, because although these things should have been thought through, there's still in this product, there's still a few things which need to be completely ironed out. Obviously, don't bring those up unless asked about. So yeah, I was just looking at my notes, and one of the things in my part of the business in the corporate world, it's not great to be big sales, sort of standing at the front of a room, thumping your fist on the table about how great it is. It's a different environment. In this environment, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 7 or 8 people in the room. 4 were the client, and then 3 or 4 that were from my company. And this is talking sense. This is having a conversation. This is not sort of. As I said, like thumping your chest and telling them how amazing everything is. So big sales doesn't work in this environment. You've got to be clever. You've got to be building relationships, building up structure. Do not go over the top. It will not respond very well. Our clients do not respond well to that sort of sales. So, and equally, it was interesting because one of the clients. Was actually someone that I worked with as a director in her previous life and my previous life. So when I was an administrator, so she said sort of, "Hi, how are you?" At the start, and I knew she was going to be there. So I think it was a bit of a surprise. I equally think in my part of the business, if you start as an administrator, you're expected. The expected route is to be in finance, risk management, stuff like that, to actually see me talking about technology knowledgeably, hopefully. Then I think it was, so we're probably talking 8-9 years since I've seen her, and she asked me how I was doing and what I was doing here, but it actually built up a bit of rapport with her because we had something to talk about, and she was then suddenly ears pricked, ready to listen to what I had to say. So I don't know, I didn't see it as a big pressure moment, but it was good. I enjoyed it, actually, to see someone who I haven't seen for a very long time and sort of demonstrate my capabilities, where my capabilities 8 years ago was significantly less. So it's just more, it's a small world, I suppose, is what my point is more than anything else. Small world, you never know who you're going to meet again. Equally, maybe we'll talk at another stage about burning bridges and not to burn bridges, because it's a prime example. she's a really nice lady. There was never any sentiment of burning bridges, but you should always keep a positive mindset and be out there, because you never know when the next time they're gonna pop up as a client or a colleague or whatever. So I wanted to talk about questions. So we sort of touched on this before. There's going to be lots of questions, especially about the subject matter, about the technology, how it's going to work. That tricky conversation did come up about pricing. Yeah, you got to be a bit careful. Where I am with our technology is that a lot of the stuff we do is not necessarily bespoke, but it's variable on different factors on the price. So we were kind of a little bit vague, and I think that's probably the right way to be at this stage. But they wanted to ask lots of questions, and we dealt with the price as an honest sort of upfront costing. It is quite expensive, but you just got to front it up. They're in the same business. They know how much things cost. They know that it's one of those things that might cost a bit more. As I said earlier, they talked about budget and where they were going to get budget from, which swings in roundabouts, because on one sense they were talking about budget, which is great, but on the other sense it was more than one buyer, so it was a bit of a problem on that front. So yeah, it's good to be able to have those conversations, hear those conversations. It gave me an insight when one of our business development guys started talking about the future, using AI, using blockchain, the progression of our technologies from something quite passive, or responding to data being uploaded or transferred from provider to provider, then into moving that technology onto giving large sets of data and using it intelligently. So I think it's always interesting when you go to these demos to hear about what other people are offering. As I say, it was mainly based on our subject, so the subject matter expert talked, I talked, and then the future of our business was discussed as well. So he restrained it a little bit, because he's hoping to get people to attend a sort of workshop to talk about the future of our business and where we see it going and where they see it going, and do our paths cross? Is there positives there? So that was to be all the clients were really interested in joining that workshop. So that was positive there. So as I said, it was a 3.5 hour meeting. It was very, very good. I just want to wrap up on the 4 things that I think that's most crucial to doing these sorts of demos. Number 1 is know your subject. This is just come as no surprise if you've listened to any of my podcasts. Know your subject, know what you're talking about. Number 2, authenticity. I think it's important that you show yourself, show your capability, show your understanding, be you. Don't try and sell someone else. And that leads on to, if you are authentic, you can then build relationships, because this is, as I said, small world. You never know when you're going to meet that person as a client or a target or a colleague. So you need to build relationships, build up relationships with them. That's really, really important. My consultancy business is all based on relationships, whether it's internal, external. Get to know people, build up that rapport, build your network, build your strength within your business and within clients. And then the 4th one is close. So we didn't get a check. Don't these days, but you know what I mean. We didn't get a checkbook at the end signed with what we're going to do, but very positive. And you've got to be able to wrap up. And sort of what was nice was the director at the end did a sort of wrap up about the subject, the technology, the future. it really sort of came at the end, and it really brought everything together into a really positive way, and I did feel that we finished off very strongly, even if we were a little bit over time, but I thought it was really good, and that should hopefully give you an insight into what a demo is, what you need to do in these sorts of presentations, and just some of my insight into how to do it well, maybe some of it was how not to do it, but hopefully you get some insight and you get some interest in doing those sorts of demos. They're big things. They're really interesting, really enlightening, give you a lot of scope to understand other parts of the business, as well as sort of talking about what you do, and that's really good as well. All right. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast. My name is Mark Hayward. You can check me out on Twitter, Mark Hayward169. You can see this on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, hiya. Podcast, normal places, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play. As I've said, YouTube is here as well. I've got a website, Absolute Business Mindset, and basically check me out on Instagram. I've recently been doing some stuff on Instagram, so check me out. Any comments, I'd love to hear your comments, especially if you're on iTunes. Leave a message, leave ideas, what you liked, what you didn't like, and if you could just tell one person, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much, guys.